Thanks for watching this episode of the Vital Point podcast. I wanted to give you some context just so you don't get confused. This episode was originally published on Instagram, and when I published it, the podcast was called One Question Wednesday. The reason for that being that I watched this amazing video with Gary Vee where he talked about if you want to do a podcast and you're just starting off, why don't you try a 90-second podcast? And I knew I wanted to talk about transformation, about integration, about breath work and meditation and things that were a little bit heavier than 90 seconds. But I thought, what if we just keep it to one question? And so that's what I did. So two things came out of that. One, much shorter episode. So these videos are a lot shorter than some of the more recent episodes you may have been checking out on my channel. And two, I just wanted to get them out. I was just learning about podcasting. I had another podcast that I had gotten the idea for, recorded 5 or 6 episodes, and then sat on them, not really being able to put them out for almost a year, worrying about the editing, worrying about the distribution and the marketing and what to do. And so the idea with One Question Wednesday was to do the exact opposite of that. From the time that I saw the video from Gary Vee to posting the first episode with Ayahuasca Car was less than 2 hours. And so, 60% became the new 100%. It is a little bit messy. It's, that was my idea. I didn't want to get trapped in a cycle of perfection. Didn't want to get stuck. And I was just figuring things out, which worked out great. So wanted to get those episodes off of Instagram where they've been living and onto YouTube to get into a bigger audience and have all of the podcasts be under one umbrella. So if you haven't checked out the more recent videos, we're on season 6 now. Definitely subscribe to the channel. There's a lot of content on there. And this first season is really defined by not having any equipment. Season 1 ended when I realized I really needed a microphone, and I've got a nice one now. So season 1 was recording onto my phone, a couple of episodes on Zoom, and then not having a microphone. But the content is fantastic. The guests are fantastic, and there's some really valuable content about breath work, about ayahuasca and psychedelic integration. And, I think the content stands on its own. So I'm still really proud of it. I'm proud of the guests that I've had on this podcast, and I hope that you enjoy it too. If you're interested in learning more about psychedelic integration, coaching, breath work, how to use breath work to support, connecting to your purpose, having a more resourced and regulated nervous system for working with psychedelics, I'd love to chat with you more about that. There's information below about how you can get a hold of me for that. And if you're not part of my newsletter, definitely click the link below to join. You'll get a free guide to using breathwork for integration to start with, as in addition to, staying up to date with the breathwork circles that I'm holding, workshops, information about the podcast, all kinds of amazing stuff. So hope you enjoyed this video. Just wanted to give some context. So, when you're watching it and it says One Question Wednesday, you're like, wait, I thought this podcast was called The Vital Point. It is The Vital Point, and the vital point is to practice, that you have to put these things into practice. But like I said in the beginning, when this was recorded, One Question Wednesday was what I was doing. So I hope you enjoy it. Cheers. All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of One Question Wednesday, the podcast where we only ask our guests one burning question. And today I have a really special guest, Michael Stone, who is the founder of Neurodynamic Breathwork. He's also my personal breathwork teacher. I went through the first facilitator training program that he offered, and just had a really transformative experience myself, learned all kinds of things that I didn't even know that I needed to know about breathwork. And so I'm just really excited for him to be here and talk to you guys about more about breathwork. So Michael, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'm very excited to be here today.
Yeah, so before we hit record, Michael was just telling me that he's on the third cohort of trainees. So I really appreciate his time. I know that takes a lot. It's a very involved program, 6 months, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so really appreciate your time, Michael. The question for today's show is why is practicing breathwork regularly so important?
And so just to start with, I would like to just, give your listeners a bit of history of why I developed neurodynamic breathwork, which is a modality that can be done online. And I originally got certified in a different breathwork modality called holotropic breathwork, which I practiced for about 10 years and did in-person workshops in Los Angeles. And I was seeing people come away with really breakthrough results, but many times people would go back into their lives and their lives would just kind of take them over and it would just kind of fade after a while. And part of it is that with holotropic breath work, it's a 10-hour day. It has to be done in person. That there's so it is a bit of a challenge for some people to be able to take a day out of their life. So, and it also takes a lot of time to produce, because you're in big venues, people are laying on mats. So I was only doing it like 4 times a year. That was pretty much as I could handle. And so I started to look at how can I make this so that people really get lasting results, not just these kind of hits, basically. And some people after one session did actually transform their lives and did bring stuff back into their lives where they made major changes. But some people didn't, where they did have amazing results, but then it just kind of faded. So I do have a science background. I was originally in chemical engineering and just science in general. And so the theory that I had was that there's this general principle in neuroscience that the neurons that fire together wire together, which in essence means that the more you do something, the more you practice something, like the stronger the neural pathway gets, and the easier it is to do it in the future. And at first, the first time you do it, it's like just a very teeny little pathway, and then as you do it more and more, it gets more like a freeway after a while. And so my theory was, if I can provide a structure where people can do a facilitated breath work, where they can really do a deep dive into their unconscious and connect to what we call their inner guiding intelligence. And what I mean by that is that in the same way that your body knows how to heal itself. In other words, if you get a cut or you get sick, you don't have to figure out how to make yourself better. Your trillions of cells in your body know exactly what to do, and they take care of it without you having to think about it. Your psyche has that same drive towards integration and wholeness. The problem is that we're constantly in our ego minds, which with these constant streams of thoughts that where we're throwing these chemicals into our body like cortisol, we're anxious, we're expecting, we're judging. And it's very difficult in our normal state of consciousness for us to access this, what I call inner guiding intelligence, this part of your psyche that knows exactly the experience that you need in order to move towards wholeness and health. So in breath work, through deeper breathing to music, you actually quiet the ego mind and can connect to this amazing inner intelligence that we all have. And it works through three things. One is through physiologically, there's certain physiological changes that happen in your body when you do deeper breathing. Your blood gets more alkaline, and there's a part of your brain that's responsible for the constructs of self and ego that has less activity, and they've measured that through fMRI, and which actually supports this quieting of this constant stream of thoughts that we all have, and quiets the mind and puts you in more of a place of stillness. And you combine that with a psychological impact where you're giving yourself permission to release and to open yourself up to emotions and to other things that need to be processed. Normally in life, we basically tell ourselves suppress. If you're like having a difficult experience like grief or anxiety, your natural instinct is to suppress that back into your body because it's uncomfortable to feel it. So normally that's our message. If it's wonderful, joyful, let ourselves feel it. If it's not, suppress into your body. And eventually that does an amazing amount of harm actually to your body where you're holding all that stuff in. It's not good for your health. It's not good for your psychological or physical well-being. So, so we're holding that stuff in, but in breath work, part of the instruction is surrender to the process. Really give yourself permission to release whatever wants to be released. So just giving yourself permission is incredibly powerful. You know, your self-talk, what you say to yourself is the most powerful way to impact your psyche. And that's why you want to be really careful just in general in life, what you say to yourself. If you say that I can't do this or I can't do that, you won't be able to do it because your psyche is listening. If you tell yourself that it's okay to surrender and open up, your psyche will listen to that too. So you have the combination of this physiological impact, the psychological impact, and also the music, which is specifically designed to allow you to drop deeper into whatever experience you need to have. So what I wanted to do was design a breathwork modality where people could experience it on a regular basis, do these deep dives, and start to strengthen the neural pathway to this inner wisdom that we all have. And so ultimately, of course, it had to be done online. It was impossible to do like 4 or 5 sessions in person every week. And people, there's no way they could have taken that time out of their lives to, take a day, 5 days out of the week. So it had to be done online. And ultimately, that's where Neurodynamic Breathwork Online was born. So we do 5 live sessions every week. And we have regular breathers who have breathed with us, some for a month, some for 3 months, some for a year, some for a year and a half, and which are actually starting after even just a fairly short period of time. But once they breathe longer, having this experience of bringing these benefits back into their life once that neural pathway is strengthened and made into this kind of freeway, where in their everyday life, they can just kind of close their eyes and take a breath and connect to this inner guiding intelligence. And the results that they talk about or that they've relate in like surveys that we do are increased trust in self, greater access to their inner wisdom, and also to what they call source, more clarity on their purpose in life. And that's one of the big ones. It's like many people in life are doing one thing and they're just vaguely uncomfortable. And even if they're making a good living, it's like, am I really doing what I'm supposed to be doing in life? Because on this kind of deeper level, they're not satisfied. And one of the results that people do get out of making breath work into a practice is they're more clear on what really is their purpose in life. What is this unique gift that they can bring to the world that nobody else can, because of their history, because of their struggles, because of their, what they've gone through. And that one result alone can be just life-changing for people when they're just suddenly in touch with their passion and what really life is calling them to bring forward. And people also report an increased connection to their intuition, creativity, relief from anxiety, greater self-awareness, release of grief, and many other things. So at first it was just a theory, when I developed this thing, but now after doing it for 3 years, it's also clear just from reported results from participants that this really, really does work when you turn it into a practice and where you can start to bring it back into your life and get these amazing results on an everyday basis.
Yeah, that's my experience for sure. Especially I really love what you said about, being more clear about your purpose. It's almost like there's a lot of different voices in the room all yelling together. And once you start to quiet down some of the ones that are telling you, oh, I'm not good enough, or I'm afraid of this, or well, we need to worry about that, then the self, that inner self, has a chance to be louder. It has you have a better chance to listen to it. And what I'm learning now with a lot of the trauma informed stuff that I'm discovering and working with is that um, some of those voices are there because of our past traumas, and really the only way to get past them is to go through it. And I know that's one of the principles of neurodynamic breathwork as well, right? Is the way past is through. And so if we are able to sit with those emotions and have a way to release that energy, then it's not the voice isn't as loud anymore. You might not even hear it at all. And all of a sudden now you can hear that purpose, that source, that, oh, this is what I really want to be doing with my life.
Right.
So I love that.
Yeah, exactly. And some of those voices are actually unconscious conditioning from your past.
Right.
And not just from your parents, but also just cultural, from society. And many times I'll hear people say that when they were growing up, they were very passionate about something like art or something. But they were told by their parents, no, you should be a doctor. You can't make a living doing art. Are you kidding me? Go to med school or whatever. And even our society has a certain amount of conditioning about what is a good career path and what is not so good career path or whatever. And just by breathing, sometimes you can look at it and actually go back into your past and see where these conditionings were actually created in your child mind when you were 5 or 6 years old. And many times it's from either, when your parents talk to you when you're little, they're your gods.
Yeah.
You're dependent on them to live. They're taking care of you. So what they say is an incredibly powerful influence on you. And what they're telling you may be true for them, but may not be true for you. So sometimes what they're telling you is really good advice and really something you should take in, but we take it all in as if it's like, this is the way the world works. And it takes a certain amount of inner work to actually see those things and really now take a step back and say, you know what, that works for my parents, or that works for the society, for the culture, but does that really work for me? Is that who I am? And to separate your conditioning from who you really are. And that's one of the things you can do in breath work, by doing deep dives into things that happened when you were a child and seeing where these conditionings were developed, and kind of looking at it from maybe a different perspective, from an adult perspective, where you can actually look at them from an objective point of view and say, does this really work for me anymore? Am I going to let the decisions that a 5-year-old made run my life? Or is there another way where I can really move forward in my life and manifest the life that I want more effectively? From this adult space where I can look at things with more possibilities right now. When you're a child, you have very few possibilities in terms of how you deal with things. And when there's strong emotions, many times the only thing you can do is suppress, because you don't have the tools to work with processing through them. You don't have them yet. Like, your adult mind is not fully developed. So it's not a bad thing. It's just you protected yourself. And that's true of trauma too. It's if you can't handle things when you're 5 or 6 or 7 years old that maybe you could have handled differently if you were 25 or 26 or 27. So your only pathway to protect yourself is suppress, and suppress it in so deeply that you can still run your life and not have it bother you. But as an adult, you can many times look back at those decisions you made from a perspective where now you've got this whole set of tools, this whole toolkit on how to work with these things, and be able to say, okay, yes, that was something that I needed to do when I was a child, but how can I work with that now? How can I work with that experience and maybe see it from a different perspective where I can use it to catapult myself forward instead of creating limitations? And many times people come out of the breath work and see these experiences that they had in their earlier life, which they feel like are holding them back, from an empowering perspective, from a different point of view, where they actually see that they can use the experience and what they learned from it to actually push them forward in life. And just seeing that is just incredibly inspiring, where people can totally turn around these experiences that have been kind of like this weight around their foot, and kind of release it and just turn into these birds and fly and say, yes, this experience is going to move me forward now, and move me into the finding what I can really offer other people, and offer other people maybe who have been through these same experiences, giving them the benefit of my experience and supporting them moving forward in their life too.
Sounds like you just described integration, right? Going from
Exactly.
this place of polarity of I have to overcome, I have to get over these things that I don't like about myself or that I'm ashamed of, that I feel guilt over. I have to find a way to overcome them, but instead, like finding a way to accept them, to love them, and to find the gold in them, to alchemize that experience into our being and
Yes.
discover that it's really a gift. It's not something that we have to get away from. If we can accept that part of us, it becomes a gift, and we can share it with the world.
Yes,
So yeah,
exactly.
I love
Yeah.
that. And I really love, everything that you just talked about was one of the things that I really loved the most about the facilitator training program. We spent a third of the program working on personal development, and so important for breathwork facilitators to be able to do their own work so that they're able to hold the space and assist their breathers and their clients. But just it was just so valuable for me, just in general, um, to do this work around the things that happen when we're 5, 6, very young, are really shaping us and the way that we see the world. And it's really time that we upgrade that software system, so to speak. If just like our phones, if we don't update our phones after a few years, things don't run as well. Certain apps might not work, or they might work slower. So our minds are pretty much the same, right? Like if we're just running off of those programs that have been happening our whole lives since childhood, but now we're adults, there's going to be things that just aren't serving us anymore, in ways that we're approaching things and dealing with things that just don't make sense from sort of a higher executive function and faculty.
Yes, exactly. And the important thing to know, like these are unconscious things. Like if we were conscious of that these things were running our lives, we could then work on them. But they're running us from under the cover, so we're not even aware they're happening. For instance, one of the benefits that I got, one of the first major benefits out of breath work, I'd had problems being in successful relationships all my life. And where, my relationships would, last 3 or 4 months and then end in dramatic failure, we're in emotions and drama in this incredible, like really uncomfortable breakup. And I could never figure it out because I was extremely successful in the other areas of my life, in business, in pretty much everything except for relationships. And so, because I was not conscious of what was causing it, the only thing I could come up with was, I just haven't met the right woman yet. It's like, I just have to keep trying. But, if you keep trying the same thing over and over again, and when it's failed like 50 times and thinking that it's going to succeed the next time, you're probably not going down the right track. So, and what I saw in breathwork was that in one of my sessions, this is probably my fourth or fifth session, I went back into my childhood, and both of my parents are Nazi Germany escapees, and they're Jewish and kind of barely escaped with their lives. And when I heard about that when I was a child, about how they'd been ensconced in the society for hundreds of years, and they'd actually, like my grandfather was a World War I hero, got the Iron Cross, which was the highest award they could give. And one of my ancestors like saved the whole city when Napoleon went through and gave him money so he wouldn't burn it down, went around it. So they were like heroes basically in their town. And then from almost one day to the next, they were chased out, or else they would die basically. And even though they didn't tell me this, the unconscious decision that I made at that point was, the world is an unsafe place. It's like, if you can't trust your country when you've been contributing to your country for hundreds of years, who can you trust? So obviously, if you're coming into a relationship from this point of view of the world is an unsafe place, you're doomed from the start. Because I was getting to a certain depth, and then this unconscious conditioning would kick in and says, don't go any further. You're going to get hurt. The person's going to turn on you. You can't trust them. And so I'd get to a certain depth, and then I would just pull back and kind of shut down. And I would drive the woman crazy. So it had nothing to do with the women. It wasn't their fault at all. It was all me. I just wasn't advanced enough in my personal development to see it from that perspective. When I was going through it, I kept blaming it on the other person. And but once I saw that, once I brought it to consciousness, I could start to work on it and start to say, like we were just talking about, am I going to let a decision that a 5-year-old child made keep me from having successful relationships? And I mean, the answer was obvious to that one. And it's not like it happened overnight, but it took me, this has been a conditioning for years, for decades. So it took me a while to really break through that and start to coming from a place to really from the world is happening to me to the world is happening for me. I mean, that was really the shift. And it took me a while, but now I think the longest relationship I'd had up to that point was like maybe maximum a year, and now I'm in a 10-year relationship. It's been amazing. So that's what's potentially available in breath work. But the first step is really seeing what these conditionings are.
Yeah, thank you for sharing such a personal story. That's really incredible. Well, I think that this was a fantastic conversation. I feel like, especially just knowing our relationship, we could keep talking about this topic for a while. So I do want to honor the format of the show and really appreciate your time. If people want to know more about neurodynamic breathwork with Michael Stone, where can they learn more?
Well, the website is breathworkonline.com, very simply. And we offer a free first session to anybody who wants to try it out. They're 2-hour sessions where you just do an intro talk, then a breathing session, and then a worldwide sharing circle afterwards. We have people from 120 countries around the world that have participated. And all you have to do is go to the schedule page. And like I said, we have 5 live sessions every week. You can pick the one that works for you and give it a try. And you can talk forever about experiential things like breath work, but ultimately the only way that you really know if it resonates with you and if it works for you is to give it a try. So we've made that as simple as possible by doing it 5 times a week, and by allowing people to do it just for free, so that there's really no risk involved. And we want to encourage everybody to give it a try. It's one of my goals in developing this breath work was to allow whoever wanted to try breath work, no matter where they were in the world, if they had a lot of money or virtually no money, to be able to let them experience these healing effects of these expanded states of awareness for breath work. So I welcome everyone to come and give it a try.
I remember when you shared that dream, that goal in the training, and I just had this wonderful vision of, at the time we were the first group, right? Of
Yes.
this is the way that your dream is spreading out, right? That you're able to access and share it with more people, and what a wonderful feeling for you that must be.
Yeah.
Just I saw it in this very sort of cosmic kind of perspective.
Yeah, I'm actually incredibly grateful for all the people that are coming in and doing the training program, and then are willing to go through the process and go through the personal development and learn how to be more self-aware and work with their own unconscious conditionings, and then going out and bringing breath work to the world.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, awesome, Michael. Thank you so much for being a guest on One Question Wednesday. I would love to do it again sometime. And yeah, check out neurodynamic breathwork. Until next time, friends.